I'm going to come bring a friend of mine up here, Thom Clark. Thom has a television show on Public Access TV. He is the director of Chicago Media Workshop. And good morning to you, Thom.
Good morning, Michael. Wonderful spring day with the really reopened Heartland restaurant.
It's good to be here, and it's good to have you. And you want to talk about public TV and public access to TV. Tell us about what's going on, Thom.
Well, there was a vote in the City Council this past week that could dramatically change the public's ability to use limited access we have on cable TV to do programming that's not commercial programming, that's not the mayor's office or alderman getting free access to the radio, but the rest of the public. It's been commonly known as public access television, or in Chicago, CanTV. And as part of a national trend around the country, the cable companies have been trying to get rid of this resource. It used to be that public access channels like CanTV had franchise fees dedicated to supporting their operations. It allowed for people to learn how to use video cameras, to use a studio to actually broadcast the infamous public access. Great variety of programming from the people.
Yeah, it can get pretty bizarre.
It can get very bizarre, but there's also lots of folks and faces you wouldn't normally see even on public television, much less the commercial stations, who have access to the airwaves. And we may be losing that access because of this vote this past week in the City Council.
All right. Well, first of all, let me ask you, why is access to public TV so limited? Why in this country with a lot of airwaves we don't even have more of it, much less what the cable TVs have given up in order to get their franchises?
Broadcasters and cable companies have a lot of power, and it shouldn't be a surprise to your listeners that those with money have more power when it comes to accessing the channels that get information out. It used to be that newspapers were that primary vehicle, broadcast outlets were the next one, and today it's the internet. The internet, fortunately, is a leveler that allows many more voices to get out there, but it still doesn't have the audience in terms of beyond niche audiences that cable itself has. And quite frankly, cable companies want to make more money, and free public access television doesn't make them money because it's uncommercial TV.
It's too bad, because we certainly need more of it. So when I saw you recently, you were actually livid about a vote that took place in the City Council. And you had actually gone down a list of aldermen who supported it and who opposed it. You felt like the 49th Ward Alderman Joe Moore was on the right side, while some other aldermen we might have expected to support public access TV were not on the right side. Tell us what came down and what it means in your estimation.
Basically, the dedicated revenue stream that used to come from franchise fees, that's the fee cable companies pay the city for the right to run wires down our alleyways.
Our alleyways.
Our alleyways, those poles out in the street. Utilities have always paid for access rights. Cable companies, when they came into municipalities like Chicago, also had to negotiate a franchise agreement, and part of that franchise agreement meant the paying of fees, which underwrote both municipal, governmental, public, and educational TV outlets as part of that package. So out of 100 channels, 4 or 5 or 6 are allocated for governmental and public access use. We are losing that dedicated funding stream as a result of this vote. The mayor clearly wants to capture revenue in this recession, although I'm not sure why a low six-figure franchise fee is going to make a difference with the city's overall budget picture. I think it's a control issue.
Yeah, you think it's not just a question of getting a little more revenue, which we know is rampant, whether it's removing parking spots, whether it be inspections and hardness by inspectors. You can't believe the stories I've heard lately of people who've been hit by the city in various ways. But you think it's more of an issue of control, that Daley wants to make sure that no negative publicity or minimal amount hits him in these times of maybe the Olympics or a challenge to him. What do you think?
Well, I think that's exactly what's going on here. CanTV will have to go back to the city council every year now to get an appropriation to keep its doors open, where they used to have a dedicated revenue stream that came directly from the cable companies. And in the technicalities of the way this highly regulated industry worked, it's very difficult for citizens to understand exactly what it was the city council did. In fact, I'm guessing that even some aldermen, surprise, surprise, didn't know exactly what they were voting on, but their leaders said, vote this way, this is what the mayor wants, and so they rolled over and played dead. In fact, the public lost with this decision this week. We will have more limited access to the airwaves, which, quite frankly, we deserve to have a right to. And quite frankly, in this shifty media landscape, any loss of public access to the airwaves is a tremendous deficit for us.
Tom Clark, how much money was coming in from this revenue stream to the city for the budget for CanTV? And tell us about there are other outlets.
Well, here's the irony. The city has its own 4 channels, which were supported by the same kind of franchise fee arrangement. CanTV got a separate payout from the cable companies that did not go through the city. By this vote, the city is now about, depending on how many cable companies were in operation, we're talking about $300,000 to $600,000. CanTV's budget is maybe $1.2 million a year. They are looking at a 1/3 cut in their operating budget in the next year alone, and will have to go back every year and justify their existence, something they wouldn't mind doing, except for the last 20 years, they had a direct access to the cable company's franchise fee. Now they have to go before the mayor and the city council to get that same money, and it's been made very clear to them that they're going to have a battle to get that money that they used to get.
And how has it been made clear to them that they will have a battle?
By virtue,
this is not a benevolent body that sees good in all things.
They've been working for the last 8 months on a compromise ordinance, and quite frankly, what happened this week was a bait and switch at the last minute. That would not have been done unless something, I'm afraid, more nefarious is afoot. And whether it's simply collecting a few extra dollars for city coffers, or, as I think, having more control over public access to the airwaves, City Hall didn't want CanTV to continue in the way that it's been.